and to his predictions about the future. He's been accused of being a communications expert who communicates poorly. He is, to most of us, the most baffling and disturbing man of the 60s. And I'll say that. He is, to me, the most baffling and disturbing man I've ever met. Now, sir, you can't be unaware that there is a growing chorus of criticism and annoyance at things you've been saying among literary circles. The Nation had a rather vitriolic editorial which accused you of being a bore, the kind of man you find yourself inevitably seated next to at a dinner. How do you react to all this sort of thing?
I try not to. I could say these bitter things much more bitterly myself because I'm, after all, a professor of English literature and very much involved in the backlog of values of literacy. And I'm rather disturbed that people are content to see all those values going down the drain without turning a hand.
We always felt like, when you're creating, you create. Whatever you decide that you want to use, you create your own particular vibration. That to me was a kind of like an unwritten code within the hip-hop world.
Hey, they're taking something that doesn't belong to them. It's mine. I gotta get paid. Hey.
3, that's a magic number. Yes, it is. It's the magic number. 3. Somewhere in this hip-hop soul community was born 3 next to me, and that's a magic number.
What does it all mean?
Lesson 3.
Got to have soul. Got to have soul.
Everyone's getting gas right now. Every man right now is getting gas at the same time. It's kind of like a male menstrual cycle. Fueled by war! I've never seen this fuckhole so fucking busy. Anyways, here's my quick comment about the Beastie Boys and the Goldieblox thing. And just the fact that Paul's Boutique is still in litigation with Trouble Funk for Shadrach.
Say what? Say what? Say what? Oh yeah! Say what?
I mean, it takes one to know one, and it just would have been more interesting if they just would have acknowledged, silently acknowledged, this is happening. If they made an exception for Goldieblox and they said like that we endorse what they're doing. Yes, we know it's a product. We're not fucking idiots, but it's a product with a good message.
Called Goldieblox. It's got over 8 million views. And these commercials, they're trying to sell you a fantasy because it makes you feel good, but it's not always reality. So I'm going to tell you some reality that these commercial people or advertisers, they will never tell you, because they want money from you. But I don't want money from you, so I'm just going to tell you the truth. As a young girl, you've been told your whole life through the media and your parents that you can do anything that you put your mind to. That sounds nice, but it's not true.
Usually when I tell people I'm an engineer, they look at me and they say,
Let's dance. Let's dance to the drummer's beat. Let's dance. Let's dance to the drummer's beat. Let's dance. Let's dance 'cause it sounds so sweet. Let's dance. Let's dance.
The message is Mars needs women.
No, really, what do you do? Our toys are now hitting the doorsteps of thousands of girls around the world. I just got an email from a mom who said, "We love playing Goldieblox. My 4.5-year-old, halfway through the game, looked at me and said, 'Mommy, am I an engineer?' And her mom said, 'Yes, sweetie, you can be. You can be anything.'"
I don't want money from you, so I'm just going to tell you the truth.
Just disrupts everything. No guys running around in between your legs. He just plays with so much heart and hustle.
Fumbled for a moment. Rhodes picks his pocket.
I try to put pressure on my opponent every time, and I know that I'm going to get it sooner or later.
Stolen by Muggsy.
In addition to his defensive skills, Muggsy also became a premier playmaker.
Well, Marshall McLuhan scarcely needs an introduction. He's been described as an intellectual comet, a genius, and a fraud. His books, including The Gutenberg Galaxy and Understanding Media, have had wide impact, especially in England, where they've just been released. Many literary men have reacted in horror to his analysis of present-day society.
This is the talk of a literate man. The literate man was all for absorbing things. The new sort of electric man doesn't want to absorb things.
You mean that in the future people are not going to be as literate?
Oh, indeed, yes. Literacy is on the skids. Oh, yes.
Now I understand why you got the reputation.
Oh,
I can
yeah.
see.
No, but
You're a shocker, isn't it?
Look, instead of going out and buying a packaged book, of which there have been 5,000 copies printed, you will go to the telephone, describe your interests, your needs, your problems, and they at once Xerox, with the help of computers from the libraries of the world, all the latest material just for you personally, not as something to be put out on the bookshelf. They send you the package as a direct personal service. This is where we're headed under electronic information conditions.
And then, of course, then there's a whole other thing that happened in the business world.
Beasties mashup in it, but now they've changed it, and that is our story. Is they got a request or an inquiry from the Beastie Boys Council, letting them know that they were concerned about the use of this song in the video, primarily because it was a commercial, and that there was a specific stipulation in the estate of the member of the Beastie Boys who passed away last year. I'm blanking on his name now. Someone in the chat.
They yes. Call him Adam Yuck, but he's MCA.
MCA.
Are you glad it was the Navy, not the Army or the Air Force?
Well, it had to be the Navy because my great-grandfather was a rear admiral. Besides which, I like blue.
And you worked on the original computer in this country, right?
I was very fortunate. The Navy ordered me to the first big computer in the United States, Mark I at Harvard.
It's called Mark I at Harvard? Now, in those days, the thing was
51 feet long, 8 feet high, and 8 feet deep.
And that was the pocket model.
So, yes, that very much did not want their music used in commercials, even though, I mean, the irony of this, of course, is that the Beastie Boys were famous for taking and sampling and having sort of a, in-your-face attitude about that.
When you guys do sampling for this record, does Davey have to go through any kind of
so much money?
Sampling, given what's going on in the past?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do they for this album, did you guys clear any of the samples, given what's going on with Eddie Castro?
Samples?
Yeah.
Samples. Well, whatever samples are there.
Who's Eddie Castro?
Are being cleared, but I just, I'm not really sure how much of that really is going on with this album.
Mike, would you look at Sean for a minute?
I'll tell you in a minute.
Look at Sean,
You guys be going out?
What's that?
You guys be going out on tour?
In the fall, yeah. We're going out in the fall. Just give us a few good stages, a few good buildings, and a few good riffs, man, and that's all it takes, Because I think right now, as MCs, we're ready to go out.
Yeah, you might be missing a few people, though. Is there anyone in particular you'd like to tour with? You just want to go solo?
Which people?
Engelbert Humperdinck.
I don't know. I tell you, a lot, like Jerry did like an acoustic thing for a while, like outside of the Dead, and that's cool. And so,
and double irony that the original song here was borderline misogynistic, and maybe not even borderline.
That was the name of the album?
The message of this
Don't be
commercial and this company and the products they sell is the opposite of that. So it was definitely a brouhaha. Goldieblox actually filed a declaratory relief action. Their initial impetus was to go into court and say, hey, we think this is fair use and we'd like a determination on that on the front end. But then they decided to go ahead and take the music out. As we just saw, they've sort of altered it down to a track that's a little bit reminiscent of Girls, but doesn't have the lyrics and doesn't have the controversy, presumably. So, Evan, what do you think about all this?
A lot of noise, not a lot of signal here. There's two things that I think are really critical with this. One, this was a Black Friday publicity stunt. I don't think there's any way around that. They built in litigation costs and paying their lawyers to do some stuff here for a few hours. That was built into the marketing budget. So I think that was part of it. And the other one is this whole idea of MCA's will. I think that was a real sea change for people's public perceptions when it came to this, that he had said in his will, and Goldieblox, said that they didn't even know about that. So I think that was a real sea change, and when kind of the temperament to all this changes, like, yeah, we got to respect this guy, and we're going to say that we respect him as an artist and all that stuff. That goes hand in hand with respecting what his wishes were, but that has nothing to do with it whatsoever. I think that this is just a pretty vanilla sort of fair use analysis to be done here, equal to Supreme Court precedent like the Campbell case, the 2 Live 3 case, because the big, I've even had many conversations here in the IRC saying, oh, well, this was a commercial use, fair use doesn't even play in, right? It's like, well, it may or it may not. Just because the use was commercial doesn't mean that it couldn't be a fair use. I think one thing that's helpful to Goldieblox, if this were to ever have been litigated, I guess it was resolved, right? If the fair use question were to ever have been litigated here, they were saying it was a parody of the actual song itself, not using the song as sort of in a satirical way, but the song was being used in of itself to comment on the song. Mm-hmm. I guess I believe that. I'm not so sure. I think the primary objective of the song was to sell.
Anyway, our breakthrough video, of course, is one that we give this video the breakthrough status because it looks so different from the rest, and usually it has to do with a very unique style of editing or direction. What happened in this case is the boy, by the way, this is from Paul's Boutique, of course. The album's been out for quite a while, and that's what it looks like if you want to check it out in your local record store. They took some live footage of the band, and then MCA, who is one of the Beastie Boys himself, has gotten this creative fling all of a sudden. He went and he colored every single frame by hand, by himself. It came up with a very high-paced action splash of color. That's probably how he described it to the record company, in fact. Here's Shadrach, breakthrough video by the Beastie Boys.
It is more difficult to make a record than it is to sample it.
Not paying a sample performer can lead the sampler to court, which is where the Beastie Boys are right now because of their unauthorized sampling of Jimmy Castor's voice on his record Hey Leroy, which they used on a song called Hold It, Now Hit It. The Beasties contend that Castor's sample is just a spice in their song, not the meat of it. But Castor doesn't care. To him, it's just stealing.
Yo, Leroy! Hey, Leroy! What? Yo, mama!
It's like up in the air. It isn't really officially decided how much is stealing and how much is making it into something new.
It's being take that personal.
Seriously.
But go ahead, take it personal.
There's a lot of things going on in a lot of magazines and a lot of people from time to time. People always asking us, is Third Base better than the Beastie Boys, and the Beastie Boys fake their way to the top? That's absolutely not true. And reading this month's Rap Masters, getting ready to hit your local stands.
Free plug
for K. Ferguson and Rap Masters and the whole thing. There's a letter here about Beastie fans rally and about the Beastie Boys, and they do a couple of good articles on white rappers,
sweating that, man.
White rappers and black rappers and the whole
They
thing.
need to get off that, man.
Articles here written about
That lazy ladies. They got lazy ladies. What lazy ladies have planned? Well, anyway, this is Don't Sweat Me by MC Shy D.
We're going to talk some more about this when we come back, though.
Don't sweat it.
Stay tuned for that.
Stop sweating the Beasties. Stop sweating third base.
Was to sell products, and then that the social commentary was, way secondary in second place with all that. But that's one of the things that would come in the fair use argument here. So, it's interesting, it's intriguing. It involves Silicon Valley innovation. It involves, women in tech. That whole freighted issue that I can't believe I even just said that because I can't ever say who can ever say anything right about that. And so there's all these different issues that makes this an intriguing story. Not to mention the fact it's the Beastie Boys. We all love the Beastie Boys. So plenty of stuff to get page views on stories like this.
Yeah, definitely read Beat on a Black Friday, and I hadn't even considered that the whole thing might have been a stunt to gain attention for the company, Evan. So it's interesting to just sort of toss that speculation into the mix. I think that they had a very solid fair use argument had they decided to take the distance. And the video was delightful and made an excellent point in sort of turning the initial lyrics on their head and sending quite a different message. But we'll never know what would have happened on the fair use front, because they did decide to go with a more vanilla track and no direct reference to the girls' lyrics. So, Sean, were you following this over the holiday?
Yeah, I've actually, it's interesting because I've been actually doing a lot of research and writing on fair use. So, I mean, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but it's interesting for me to watch the public reaction, because one of the things that just happened in the room is somebody did make the comment that, this is a commercial use, therefore it couldn't be fair use. And it's funny to think about it, because were this 1978, 1980, that would absolutely be the case. And over the years, the commercial aspect of fair use has actually been disappearing to be replaced with what they call transformativeness. And in here, the way that they took the song and created a parody of it is actually kind of the paradigm of what is a transformative use of the work. And so I was really it was really interesting for me to see kind of the public's reaction, because this is actually a shift that's been happening basically since a case called Sony in 1980, which set out the commercial aspect. And then the Two Live Crew case, which I can't remember the rest of it.
Handcuff Rose came out.
That case is where transformativeness, the Supreme Court said it was important, but then it took the circuit courts another 10 to 11 years before they started saying, oh, well, that's what they meant in Two Live Crew. And so we had a case in the Second Circuit called Carriou last year that talked about, well, if it's transformative for who? If it's transformative because the artist intended it to be? Or does the audience, is it because the audience objectively sees it as transformative? And Carriou actually said it's the audience that matters. So, the interesting thing here is, well, they were doing this, their purpose was as a publicity stunt, and they were going to, this was all commercial use, and their intent was bad. And if the Ninth Circuit were to follow Carriou, that wouldn't matter, because it only really matters what the audience thinks of the work in the end. So, definitely a little far in the weeds, but I mean, this is kind of like the little declaratory judgment action that I really wish would have happened, but I can completely understand completely understand kind of everything going on. I think Goldieblox, once they pulled out the whole well, this was in his will, Goldieblox was like, okay, we're just gonna lose every bit of public support we got when we first filed this lawsuit. So
yeah. What I think is fascinating about what you just said, Sean, is the recognition, the slow evolving recognition by courts considering fair use, that there's a commercial aspect to almost everything that people do, and that can't be the touchstone for deciding if something is fair use. There's certainly a sliding scale for how commercial something is. This was fairly high on the top end of that scale of, this was an actual commercial for a product. But when you're talking about people doing things online, there's almost always some kind of commercial component, whether they're promoting some other business that they might be involved in, whether they have ads on their site. It's getting really hard to parse whether
companies, I think, in multi-touch attribution, which is another interesting topic. Companies like, I think, Datalogics.
What does that mean? Multi-touch?
Yeah, so that's actually
attribution.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting. Sorry, big jargon.
MTA, multi-touch attribution.
Right.
I don't even know that one.
Multi-touch attribution is fascinating. So basically, users don't necessarily convert on the first ad they see, right?
Got it.
So I may see ad A on Facebook. But
for what?
Let's say it's for AdStage. I see an ad for AdStage on Facebook. But I'm like, I don't really, I saw it, it's interesting.
Yeah, maybe I need it, maybe I don't.
Yeah, maybe I don't need it. And so then I go to Google, and now I'm typing in cross-network ad platform, right? And I see the ad for AdStage again. And then I'm like, okay, now I want to click and check it out, and I want to actually convert. So then they go, and so who actually gets the credit for that click? Because Facebook claims that they played a role in that actual click. Right?
You didn't click, but they may have...
They influenced the user a little bit. They created some kind of familiarity, right? And for that reason, they lowered the barrier, right? And so that was a multi-touch event where Facebook had the first touch, Google had another touch, and then the conversion happened.
And right now, it's the person who gets the click is the one who benefits.
So it depends on the type of attribution model that you're using. That model that you just mentioned is called last click attribution. So whoever was the last click event, that person gets the actual, they get the credit. Right.
Does that mean people are building services around getting the last click? Like maybe eHouse, design how to, they write a bad article on how to change your oil and it doesn't really answer the question. So then they have people who change oil at the end, they get the last click. Mm-hmm. But, other people like Google or Facebook, people see the how to change oil website and don't click it.
Yeah, I mean, people are, so a lot of folks are trying to combat this by building multi-touch attribution tools, right? And so a lot of companies like ours at AdStage, we should have multi-touch attribution within our tool. It's good because it shows advertisers, who should really get the credit, right? You want to have a last-click attribution. You don't want to just have a last-click attribution model. You want to see that funnel as much as you can. Like currently, we're going to launch with our first version of it, and it's just going to be assists.
Whether something is quote unquote commercial or not. And I think it's wise, of course, not to have that factor so strongly into the analysis. Do you agree?
Sure. And I mean, I think, also, the whole commercial use aspect is really meant not so much on the part of the person who is using the person who's committing fair use, or that's not the right way of putting it, but it's really more how much does it affect the market for the original work? Is this something that they would have that we would have reached out and pay them? And so if you think about, like, for instance, music sampling, there is now kind of there's a market for doing sampling, and it's become more commonplace for there are large amounts of money to be paid to sample music. Here, the Beastie Boys refuse to allow that sort of thing, and so you could even say that because of this refusal, they don't want to use it in advertising. They don't want to license their work to other people, which is ironic because, I mean, if you go back to Paul's Boutique, I don't know that much permission was asked for a lot of that, but I just completely lost my train of thought. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Let that train go into the station. It happens all the time. I asked, any thoughts on Goldieblox and the Lost Math Shop here?
Yeah, during the discussions, I was looking at the lyrics for Girls, and I think arguably there's a lot of commentary because as the thing is playing, the first thing I heard, I'm like, oh, that's the song Girls by Beastie Boys, and obviously the melody is a little changed, but I was able to identify it, and I didn't even realize it was a parody at first until the song continued. But the lyrics go, girls to do the dishes, girls to clean up my room, girls to do the laundry, girls and in the bathroom, and it continues going that way. So obviously, like, it's mocking the very lyrics that, I mean, we were seeing this Rube Goldberg contraption, and to do the dishes, they actually have, like, some devices causing this because these girls are engineers, so it's very different. Right. So, like, even if you wanted to say, if you wanted to argue commentary, that seems really good too. But as Sean was saying, the idea is in this modern age, if you take a song that sounds like a recorded work at this point and you put it on a commercial, people freak out. they absolutely freak out because it could never possibly be fair use, because fair use in the minds of people has gotten so slim because everything's gotten so locked down that it's kind of a scared reality to think that, yeah, you couldn't possibly have a parody. It's like, yeah, you can have a parody too, or even commentary, and that's okay. We're entitled to that.
But let's be careful in our... Go ahead, Denise.
I was going to say that's a sad trend if it's true, because parodies are one of the most delightful forms of entertainment in our society, and I would hate to see them chilled in that way. What were you going to say, Evan?
Well, I was going to say, we've really got to be careful in our analysis here when we're talking about parody, and because this all comes under the idea of transformative use, which that notion, that word is not in the Copyright Act, it's not in Section 107, but that in turn comes under this first of the 4 fair use factors, the nature and character of the use, including whether or not such is of a commercial nature. So when we're examining whether this is a commentary on something, we've got to be very critical in making the distinction as to whether it's a commentary on reality, e.g. the state of women in tech and the societal stereotypes that boys like these more engineering skewed toys, whereas girls are expected to what was the commercial they were watching? Was it a CoverGirl ad or something? Girls are supposed to do this and boys are supposed to do this. Is it a commentary on that, or is it a commentary on the work? And only to the extent that it's a commentary on the work is it more likely to be protected as a fair use. So we can talk all we want about whether it's being a commentary, but we've really got to be careful not to, conflate or, I guess, gloss over that idea of what the commentary is about, because we could spill all this ink and generate all these pixels about its commentary nature. But if it's not a commentary about the work, fair use is not going to. It's not going to have much of a fair use is not going to help it all that much. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think they could have made a very good case that it was commentary about the work when you go back through the and compare the two sets of lyrics.
I realize that I'm getting irritating because I keep pushing on points here, and I'm supposed to just lay back and chill out, and we're supposed to move on to the next topic. But
that's okay.
I would argue against that by saying, look, the real purpose of this music, and this is something I said earlier, the real purpose of the use of this music here was not to make a commentary. That's way in second place. The real purpose was to sell these darn things. This was a commercial. It was a commercial.
Right. I think there's room for the clever commercial, I guess is what I'm saying.
But look, it's as if Goldieblox implicitly agrees that there was a market for this, and I don't want to be guilty of conflating stuff, because we got to be concerned about that first fair use factor, the purpose and character of the use, and then it's a different factor, the effect on the market. So we got the commerciality in the first factor, and then the effect on the market in the fourth factor, and those are easy to confuse here. It's as if Goldieblox implicitly admitted that there is a market place for this, the commerciality of it, because they rolled over when it got out that this was in Adam Yauch's will. So we recognize that there is a market for use of this music in a commercial setting, which would eviscerate any notion that this was pure commentary. This was for the purpose of selling products. Now I'll chill out and we can move on.
I see what you're saying. Yes, it would have been a close call in court probably, but it almost seems as though they architected the unaltered commercial with a fair use argument in mind, but they, just never got that far down the road with it. And probably you're right, Evan, that they did not want the PR backlash of going against Adam Yauch's will.
And that actually reminded me of what I was saying, was that the Beastie Boys refused to license their music. So fair use was the only option they had, that they wanted to use this particular song and make a commentary on it for whatever reason, to sell their product. That was their only option. There was no going to the Beastie Boys and asking them. And so that was kind of what I was saying is there was no market for them to interrupt, because the Beastie Boys weren't licensing the music, so the market didn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, wait. No, the market didn't exist. We just met, Sean, so I'm not trying to be me. The market didn't exist because the Beastie Boys said it doesn't exist. That's different than the market existing in reality, because the market certainly does exist for the use of commercial music for the use of popular music in commercials.
Sure. There are probably people who are dying to license Beastie Boys music for commercials, but they're shut down when they ask.
Right on.
All right, let's talk about Hot File. Speaking of getting shut down.
Thompson House.
From here, Roy Thompson operates radio and television stations, magazines, newspapers, and book companies in 20 countries. The king of communications is told he should meet the philosopher of communication, the controversial Marshall McLuhan.
The dominant medium of communication in any age alters the way people think, feel, act, and react. Television is thus returning the viewers to the picture thinking of primitive men. Of course, I think this is all pie in the sky myself.
Dr. McLuhan arrives.
Some of the critics of McLuhan made fun of McLuhan because they accused him of being a bringer of doom, and they thought they were impervious to doom.
Then that would mean that they'd be causing the same kind of evolution that apparently their music caused through sampling, and giving people a different understanding of the meaning of sampling rather than just like theft, which is how it's depicted all the time. It would be transformative, which is what Goldieblox is going by.
Any specialist is going to see to it that his specialty is protected against any invasion from any quarter. They've got a very good thing. They've taken a long time to acquire this specialist skill, and they don't see why they should yield 1 inch to people with different methods.
Well, McLuhan...
For so long, for so many years, I felt like I didn't fit in. But now, I feel like I belong here. I feel like I belong, and our little girls do too. Thank you. And I'm here to make a bold claim. I don't fit in, but I believe that our little girls will. So this is me when I was a little girl.
Called Goldieblox. It's got over 8 million views.
And with the rise of Xerox, the book ends and becomes not so much a package as a service. With Xerox, you can go to the telephone and ask for any batch, any set of materials that belong to the problems you're studying, and a computer can contact the libraries of the world, and those materials can be Xeroxed for the student upon request at very high speed. This kind of service is custom built, it's individual, private, whereas the book was not a private service, it was for the group, it was a mass-produced form for the market, whereas Xerox and all other electric technology tend to be service-oriented, decentralized, and custom-made. We are returning in the electric age to all the values of the age of the crafts, and in education as in politics, the need is for decentralism. When you have instant access to every type of information, as centralism becomes unnecessary.
Or Bloomingdale's, who want to reach a new audience that can't afford the product, but they could rent their products to reach that new audience and drive membership and start to get some affinity to them, and as well as getting unused inventory or off the shelves and into hands and activated. So don't sell a high-end product once, sell it 1,000 times.
Okay, so now I'm just curious about, I want to transition a little bit here, because I get it when you're talking about the physical goods and the services, but now I want to get into the very quirky, convoluted, confusing world of digital goods. Used MP3s, used Amazon Kindle
Xbox
books.
games.
Xbox games are physical, so you can sort of dump those in the mail. I'm talking about, like, I got this MP3, I got this album, this Bob Dylan album, I don't want it anymore, I want to sell it. I'm not allowed to. I've got
Talking
this
about
Kindle.
DRM here.
Yeah. So now, we have to be able to, you and I do this for a living, we love this world, we know that the difference between me having a copy of my book here or me having a copy of it on my Kindle, regardless, if you walked in there and said, here, take the book, I could do that. I can't do that on my Kindle. If I had a CD here, I'd just whip it at you and you'd put it in your bag and you'd rip it and give it to someone else. We can't do that when it's down. Does this collaborative economy force the hand of that very, very tricky issue? And the reason I'm asking you this is because you know this as well as I do, that there are no copies anymore. I mean, if I were to give you my MP3s, they are not a copy, they are a whole entire new set. It really isn't a copy.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't look at the digital goods as closely in this. I was mainly focusing on goods and services because I know there's a whole battleground happening there that I just couldn't go that much further into that. But right about the same time, you did see Microsoft Xbox retract its draconian sharing of DVDs, and also there's an online portion of games, by the way, not just physical DVDs that you plug into the CD-ROM.
But we're seeing this right now. Like, we are seeing startups who are in the business of, and this is squarely in the same way the transactions would happen in all the examples you have in the collaborative economy, who want to be able to let people sell their used Kindle
like
ebooks.
Mega Upload.
They want to be able to let people sell their MP3 files, their movies, whatever. This is going to be this idea of the emergent collaborative economy could be, again, to use that Gladwellian idea of the tipping point that forces the hand of this. Like, what are you going to do?
As long as the business model works for this, and this is why we looked at that second model, which is motivate a marketplace. And if you can encourage the community to share these once DRM protected properties, let them have a cut back to the company, the media creator. There's models that can encourage the crowd to be the sales force to get that content to spread and share.
Right.
There's ways to do this. It just hasn't been figured out yet.